So I did a live show yesterday, and to be honest, it was a bit of a disaster. The computer cut out halfway through recording. I had to do it in two separate bits. It was very stop-start. Not my finest hour. At least one interesting thing did come out of it, however. One of the discussion points about the live show was that Mayweather-Berto was pay-per-view in the States, and I was hoping that it wouldn't be pay-per-view in the UK. Cut a long story short, I said I wouldn't be keen to stay up till 4:30 in the morning and pay 20 quid for the privilege of this fight. Put simply, it doesn't excite me. There isn't enough drama around it. There really isn't any hope of Andre Berto winning, and I just couldn't see myself parting with my money towards a fight that, for me, was so one-sided. Now, one of the people who commented in the chat, a chap called Richie, came out with a very, very interesting point, which he wanted to point out, which is that Anthony Joshua versus Dillian Whyte happens to be on the same day as Mayweather versus Berto. Now, for me, that is fascinating, because despite the fact that at some point Eddie Hearn may happen to play that off as a convenient, what's the word I'm looking for, a coincidence, I have a feeling that was very much pre-planned, especially given the fact that Joshua Whyte's been delayed, given the fact that Mayweather's fight dates are extremely predictable. He always fights on the same time. I have a feeling that was very pre-planned. You know, Mayweather-Berto, Joshua Whyte, for me, they're two fights that are almost pay-per-view, but are not quite there. You know, Joshua, he's becoming a huge star. He's probably the biggest fighter now. He's probably taken over Carl Frost in terms of the casual fan in the UK as the #1 casual fan fighter out there. And I think that him against an unbeaten fighter in a grudge match with all the hype that's going to be surrounding that is borderline pay-per-view in Eddie Hearn's mind. Not in my mind, in Eddie Hearn's mind. Now, I think the reason he would struggle to sell that is because the lack of a world title on the line. You know, the lack of something really meaningful and, you know, global. I think it's for a British title. At the same time, Mayweather-Berto, again, it's fringe for the UK market. You know, historically, Mayweather fights have been free to air in the UK. Recently, with the Pacquiao fight, they justified putting it on pay-per-view. And you wonder, apparently that was fairly successful, if they'd want to continue the trend, you know, keep that momentum going. I think that's a possibility, and I think had he fought Amir Khan, Kell Brook, Keith Thurman, it's something they may well have continued. But with Andre Berto, it puts that into doubt. It brings that into question. You know, the UK fan is just not going to buy into Andre Berto to the same extent. And I question whether that meant that it wouldn't be a pay-per-view in the UK. I was siding with the fact it would probably be free-to-air, Berto Mayweather. However, in my mind, the fact that these two fights are on the same night is no coincidence. For me, this is cleverly pre-planned. And what Eddie Hearn is doing relies on this new Sky pay-per-view model, you know, where they're trying to get as much on as possible. Myself and Boxing Banter on Ultratech Sport Channel did a video where we discussed the prospect of pay-per-views in the UK every 8 weeks. And I said I thought it would be unlikely because Hearn's stable was too weak. It's funny, I was right that Eddie Hearn wouldn't be able to make these pay-per-views on his own, but I was wrong in that I didn't realise how crafty he'd be in getting them from elsewhere. At the same time as this fight, you should notice that the proposed date for Kell Brook Diego Chavez is exactly the same date as Tyson Fury fights Vladimir Klitschko. I do not believe that these two fights are coincidentally on the same night. The same as I don't believe that Joshua versus Whyte is the same night as Mayweather-Berto. You know, for example, Germany and England, as we know, don't have dissimilar time frames. Eddie Hearn couldn't... Sorry, time... I know what I'm trying to say, I can't express it. Time zones, you know. Foreseeably, a boxing fan would have to choose between what's in Kell Brook and Vladimir Klitschko Fury, and I think Klitschko Fury was going to win. So unless that was on the same pay-per-view, I think Kell Brook would be a disastrous card on his own. I think it would lose out. Yeah, for me, those two are definitely going to be shown on the same pay-per-view, and I think it's likely that Dillian Whyte Joshua will be on the same pay-per-view as Mayweather. So what I'm getting at is, by buying international fights, in my mind, Eddie Hearn has made 2 pay-per-views out of fights and fighters that are not being promoted by him. Floyd Mayweather, Tyson Fury, Vladimir Klitschko, Andre Berto. None of those fighters are on Eddie Hearn promoted shows. None of them are signed to Matchroom, yet they're going to be headlining 2 Sky Sports pay-per-views. And what this allows Eddie Hearn to do is put in guys like Anthony Joshua, Kell Brook, who are on the fringe of being standalone pay-per-view stars, but not yet there, as headliners of the UK wings. Nobody's going to complain about Kell Brook Chavez if the night is actually headlined by Fury versus Klitschko. So I think it's a very shrewd, smart move from Eddie Hearn, and I think he's turning events that are just missing out from being pay-per-view into pay-per-view events. When we discussed this previously on the channel, I certainly didn't expect Eddie Hearn to be so efficient at winning these massive international fights and converting them to UK pay-per-views. But I want to forecast that, in my opinion, these are going to be 2 pay-per-view events that are definitely coming to your screen soon. And as someone who said they wouldn't buy Mayweather Berto, perhaps I am going to be one of the mugs queuing up to give my 20 quid away now that Joshua Whyte is on the pay-per-view, because that's a fight that excites me. Similarly, I wouldn't pay pay-per-view for Kell Brook Diego Chavez, not in a month of Sundays. But, I will end up paying my 20 quid to see Tyson Fury versus Vladimir Klitschko. You can mark my words on that. And another prediction from me. These double-header pay-per-views with the big international wing, don't be surprised if this is an attempt to put the costs up of pay-per-views. I noticed that pay-per-views traditionally in this country have been £15. I think with Mayweather Pacquiao, if you didn't book it through your Sky TV set, if you did it by the phone, it was 25 quid or 20 quid by the box. At the present, there's a vast discrepancy between what we pay for a pay-per-view and what the Americans pay. I think they paid $100 for that Mayweather Pacquiao fight. Don't be surprised if these double-header pay-per-views are a way of introducing higher-priced offerings to the customer on the basis that it's still value for money because you're getting 2 shows instead of 1. I don't think they're going to rock the boat at this point too much, so it wouldn't surprise me if the events are maybe $19.99 instead of £15 or instead of $16.17, what it's been in the past. It wouldn't absolutely amaze me if, with the star power of Fury, Klitschko or Floyd Mayweather, we start seeing more at the £25 bracket, and I think this is a dangerous trend that's likely to continue. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Am I right? Am I wrong? Will this continue? And will you be buying those 2 pay-per-views if the lineups are as I'm suggesting? Thanks.